Hi, this is just a quick walk around of my 2001 Nissan Xterra. XE is the submodel. This is mostly intended for guys who are thinking about getting into off-roading, don't really know what kind of vehicle to go for, and to have a feel for what they're getting into. The Xterra is a particularly low entry point. I really like it. There's nothing fancy about it. It's a workhorse, and you can pick one up for $4,000 or $5,000. This is 2017. That's what the price is on the East Coast. They're real easy. The modifications, you're not going to have as many kind of choices as you would if you had a Jeep Wrangler or even a Toyota 4Runner. But there's a number of very good aftermarket suppliers. So let's get to it. So like I said, this is a 2001. I mostly bought it just for dogs and to get through the occasional snow we have here in the mid-Atlantic. There's a number of modifications you want to make right off. First thing I'd recommend is that we're not as high. We don't have the ground clearance as a Jeep Wrangler. So the first thing I would do is skid plates, which are metal plates that are attached underneath. I have 4 of them, one to protect the gas tank, one to protect kind of the radiator in front, one over the transfer case, and one over the transmission. You really don't want to get off-road and smash your oil pan on a rock and end up, your engine seizing up 10 miles from the nearest paved road. So that would be first round. The other thing is, you can see over here, along where this step is, it's a little banged up by the rocks, but you can see that there's a heavier duty on the inside right along the rocker panel. Those are the skid bars that protect your rocks, but you can see it's a little lighter metal around on the step that got a little banged around. So one of the first things you're going to probably want to look at is tires. So the Xterra comes with either 28 or 29 inch tires. These are 33s. Again, moving up on ground clearance, giving yourself more ability to operate off-road. They also come with the stock automatic locking hubs. I've replaced mine. Mine just wore off. They were fine. But I've replaced them with worn manuals, which are even stronger, just to be sure. The technique or the logic behind what I've done here is pretty much I tried different things, wanted to make sure I actually liked off-roading and how much I wanted to do of it before I started spending money. You don't want to end up in a situation where you've dropped an awful lot of money and you're basically done with the sport within 6 months. So as I got into harder trails, I ended up breaking the stock kind of combination of metal and plastic front bumper, and so I moved to this ARB heavy-duty off-road bumper. It's been a trooper. It is just definitely held up for me under all kinds. At that point also, I was getting to do it enough. I was maybe 6-8 months into it that I found online a fairly inexpensive, worn 8,000-pound winch. It's got controls outside like many. I also went ahead and had a switch put on the dashboard so I could do it from inside. When you move to bigger tires, you're going to find that your jack that comes with the car really doesn't cut it anymore. You're just up too high. And so this is what's called a high lift jack. Some old timers call it a farm jack. I think it was originally designed to be able to lift tractor wheels. And this is what you're probably going to want to get. I've mounted mine on the front just to keep it out of the way. The other thing is, you can see I've got these wires coming down. They're called limb risers. This is about $45 worth of hardware store cables and turnbuckles and whatnot. I've just attached it up there near the light bar, and that just allows to keep, I'm on as I said, in the mid-Atlantic, East Coast of the United States. Heavy forest, beautiful forest, but you can crack your windshield without a lot of trouble, and this just gives you a little extra protection to keep the limbs off as you're going through the woods. Above there, you can see that's a 42-inch light bar, I believe. Again, controlled in. If you think you're going to do any night stuff, also in some of the more crowded trails, I found it very helpful to let that dirt biker know, or that was coming through fast and couldn't hear you, let him know you were there, is to have that light on even during the day. So as we move around the truck, you can see this is the Snorkel, which lots of guys get for just kind of bullshit reasons because they look cool. And they do look cool, and I'm not saying that. I waited until one day after I came back from a trip, and I'd been going through a number of creeks and mud holes and whatnot, and I found water in the airbox, and there I decided it was worth the investment. This is a Australian brand. I'm blanking on the name. Not an ARW or ARB, excuse me. So as we go along, you can see again, same kind of setup on the other side. Up on top, there's another view of the light bar. Here, you can see what I've done with the limb risers here, is I've kind of supported them from behind as well, just to make sure that, you want them tight, but you don't want them like yanking the, pulling on your cargo carrier up here on top. Here that was my Rhodesian Ridgeback Henry, beeping the horn with his tush. This is a Dep-Hep rack. They make a lot of them for the Xterras. It's a fab shop, I'm not sure where. I kept an eye open until they went on sale and finished it off myself. I had to kind of sand it and paint it and whatnot, but that was certainly no big deal. And it's a nice roof rack. Really works well for me. Coming around the back, you can see I've got, for those of you who don't know, these are called Max Tracks. They're really a lot of help in the snow, a lot of help in the sand if you're going on beaches. We really only have one major beach where I am, which is at the Assateague National Seashore in the Maryland coast. It's a nice beach to drive on, though. Little extra just protection there for the rear. This tire carrier is from Wilco. It's called their Solo brand. Fits right into the trailer hitch. I have, you can't see it very well, I apologize, but a heavy-duty Schrockworks off-road rear bumper. Schrockworks is out of, I believe, Houston, definitely Texas. That's the company that I also got those rock sliders and the skid plates from, and they're quite good. I would highly recommend them. Trying to think what else to tell you about it. It's got a 3.3 liter gasoline or petrol, depending on where you're from, engine. It's a real workhorse. Nissan does not make a lot of changes very quickly. And so once they get an engine and they like it and they've had it for a few years, it's kind of bulletproof. And that I really have appreciated on this. The only real change I've made down here is I have added a yellow top battery. I did that when I moved to the winch, just to make sure that there was enough cranking power there to be able to start my car as well as run my winch. Most of us leave our cars running. We may be kidding ourselves that the alternator can recharge that fast if we really had a winch for a long time. I also carry a second yellow top in the car when I go off-road, fully charged, just in case I really did run into trouble. I could swap in a new fully charged battery. But one other thing here before I leave, you can see that little mount over there. That's for the CB radio. Don't do what I did. I got a couple of guys who were mostly car, audio guys put it in. They use self-tapping screws. They just put it in the sheet metal. It really needs to be bolted. Find a spot where there's a rail. You bang it around off-road for a little while, and it's going to come off. It's going to rip right off in the middle, 10 miles up the mountain someplace. Now, quickly, just to give you the interior. Also, this has a 3-inch suspension lift. One thing I should say is that when you move to the larger tires, you're going to want to be able to also raise the suspension so you're not rubbing tires. I would suggest a suspension lift over a body lift. A body lift lets you gives you more space for the tires, but kind of throws off the geometry of the way the suspension and the linkages and whatnot have all been put in. So if you can do it with a suspension lift, I think the engineers would be a little more comfortable with that. This also has, at the same time, you'll find if you move to a larger tire, you can end up sort of your shift points on your transmission. This is a manual. They get a little out of whack. You're just feeling like you're always downshifting to get up that hill. So I've had this re-geared. I would suggest that if you decide you're going to go in and re-gear I took this up to, the final gear ratio is a 5.13, which is the most you can do on these Nissan Xterras. The first generation, 2000 through 2004, you can do and still fit in the pumpkin in the differential housing. And that certainly has worked very well for me. If I'm in low gear, this has a pretty standard transfer case. It's roughly a 2-to-1. So I'm down in first gear, 4 low, with that re-gear differential. I've got about a 37-to-1 final ratio, which has certainly been just fine in the rocks so far. The only thing limiting me is my skill as a driver. So, and that's just going to take practice. So anyway, the other thing I was going to say, so I would think about when you go to do, if you end up with bigger wheels, if you find you're going to have to re-gear, if they're going to have to open up those differentials, one thing that has made a tremendous difference, it's at least doubled my traction, is to go to air lockers. ARB air lockers, they're expensive, but it's on command. They come on, they come off beautifully. You also get an air compressor as part of it to drive them. If you mount it in a place that's easy to get to, you can have your own inboard compressor to air back up after you've come off-road. So let me show you a little bit of the inside of the cab. It's not particularly modified the way a lot of guys do, but it'll give you an idea of how you might want to set it up. There's Henry again. So right here these are the controls for the winch, an on-off switch, and then an in-out switch, give you a little extra. This is just standard Nissan stuff. This is for the light bar. Over here you see, well, I have a CB radio. This is a Cobra 29. It also has Bluetooth, which is acting up at the minute, but for the most part. You may want to take your time and figure out how you want to mount them to really be able to get access to it, be able to see the dial when you're sort of in a situation. There's the mic for it, and then just a little spot for a telephone. The other thing down here, I'm sorry, it's a little hard to see. So these are the controls for the lockers, and the way they tend to work, at least the ARB ones, is the first switch on the left is for the compressor to come on. The second switch is for the rear lockers, which you tend to use more than the front, and then the third is for the front. And you can't turn on the front lockers without turning on the rear lockers. I'm not sure what the ARB logic, clearly some sort of safety concern, but beyond my experience in terms of figuring out why you would always want the rear on when you put the front on. Turning the front on makes it extremely hard to steer, so you definitely only want to use it when you're going in a straight line. So that's basically it. I can't think of anything else that if I was, I would have wanted somebody to tell me when I was starting out in this thing. But I would go slowly. I don't know that there's the trails, at least on the East Coast, we have a wide range from kind of national forest, national park, and then some private old strip mines up in Pennsylvania, north of Harrisburg. There's a number of different places you can go. Start out slow. See whether you like this. Don't be one of those guys that drops $50,000 on the top of the line Rubicon and then ends up, it's just parked in the driveway after 6 months. Just see whether you like it. See how much you need. See how much you want to mix camping or anything else in the rides. And just enjoy yourself. So anyway, that's all I've got to say. Hope this is helpful. Bye.